Thank you for tuning in. It's that time again for another Rice Rewind. And today I am re releasing interview number 2 with Charlie Lee. I will include a link down below in the video description and above for our first conversation together. Charlie is a computer scientist. He is the creator of Litecoin, and he currently serves as the managing director of the Litecoin Foundation. This interview was originally recorded and released on February 9th, 2022. Charlie, I appreciate you coming on the Rice TVX. How you doing today?
Good, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
And again, man, I really appreciate your time, and I'm definitely looking forward to the conversation. Before we get into all things Litecoin, I know you're a big, huge sci-fi fan. So I wanted to ask you, because the last time we talked, I found out that you're a big, huge Star Wars fan. What are your thoughts on Disney and what they've put out over the past year or so with The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, the upcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi and such?
I'm enjoying it. I mean, I think my theory is that if a show or movie has lightsabers in it, it can't be bad. So,
well, as a long time fan, what do you think about what they did with The Mandalorian and also with kind of giving a little bit of more story about Boba Fett?
I really enjoyed The Mandalorian. I thought it was a really good show, even if it wasn't Star Wars. I thought it was just a good show, a great show. And of course, they added like the Baby Yoda just to get the merchandise sales, right? So that's typical Disney for you. The Book of Boba Fett is pretty good, but they kind of made Boba Fett's character like much weaker, because Boba Fett was always like a very mysterious, like menacing character. Right now he's nice. he's trying to do the right thing, which is kind of not Boba Fett, but it is what it is.
Well, I mean, and the cool thing about that, and I totally get what you're saying. The cool thing, I guess, is that just started to progress with the show, with his relationship with the Tusken Warriors that took him in. Yeah, so I don't know. Know Tusken Raiders. I'm not sure if that's what happened to bring about a little bit of change in him, but I get what you're saying, man. But I did want to get your thoughts because I know you're a huge fan. So
yeah, you can see my what's over there, my lightsaber and BB-8 over there.
What is that sword behind you as well?
That's a Game of Thrones sword.
Game of Thrones. So you're a big Game of Thrones fan?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I love the TV show except for the last season.
I'm looking forward to seeing what this series is going to be about the Targaryens.
Oh, the prequel? Yeah, that's coming out soon.
Yeah, that looks really cool from what I've seen with the previews and stuff. But I know people are probably like, why are you not talking about Litecoin? So I guess let's go ahead and get into and again, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Make sure you guys are smashing that like button. Litecoin just recently had its 10-year anniversary. The Genesis block and the GitHub information was released on, and correct me if I'm wrong with anything, Charlie, on October the 7th, 2011, and it was officially released publicly, if I'm understanding, on the 13th of October, so just a couple days later.
Announced on the 7th, and about a week later, it was launched. The network went live, and everyone was mining from the start. Yeah, around October 13. October 14, I think, if you're in the US.
Okay. Were you in US when you launched it?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And one of the things that I was looking at, and I like to kind of look at a lot of different sources. Looking at Wikipedia, it talks about this being under an MIT X11 license. What exactly is that?
Actually, you know what? If I remember correctly, it was October 12 in the US and 13 in the UK. It was, the launch time is set in the UK, but I was in the US. It was actually October 12th.
Okay.
So just like Bitcoin, Litecoin is open source, right? You can copy, you can fork, you can do whatever you want as long as you keep the keep the copyright and acknowledge the developers that you fork from, right? Or the code base that you fork from. Yeah.
So it's kind of like a scientific, more academic version of GitHub in a sense.
It's just it's a different licensing agreement. There's slight differences, but generally it's more open.
Okay.
You can do a lot more.
That's cool. It was
but
just
that's the beauty of open source, right? Just to foster people working together and building on top of each other's ideas.
No, I agree. I'm a big proponent of open source, 100%.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we have 10-year anniversary. What are your thoughts? And I mean, we're obviously a little bit over the 10-year mark, but what are your thoughts a little over 10 years later since you created Litecoin with everything that's happened, not only with Litecoin, but cryptocurrency? What are your thoughts overall in the past 10 or so years?
Crypto in general has exceeded my expectations in terms of price, in terms of adoption. I mean, I always thought it was going to succeed and get here, but I thought it would take longer. So 10 years, it really moved quite fast, and which is great. And Litecoin obviously exceeded my expectation. I didn't expect too much from it when I launched it, and right now it's to put it in perspective, Bitcoin's market cap when Litecoin was launched was about $100 million. So right now, obviously, Bitcoin is a $1 trillion market cap, and Litecoin is, what is it today, like $7-8 billion. Obviously, it fluctuates by the billion every few days. So,
right.
And so Litecoin's market cap is what, 80 times what Bitcoin was when I launched Litecoin, and that is crazy if you think about that. Like if Litecoin matched Bitcoin's market cap, it would already be a huge success. So it was definitely pretty crazy wild ride we've had the past 10 years.
Oh, definitely. And what's really cool, and I have this linked in the video description too, as well, is this thread that you have on your Twitter. It's the pinned post, but it's so you can either just go directly to Charlie's Twitter account at Satoshi Light or in a video description, but it's a pretty good detailed explanation of Charlie's thoughts and everything he can remember that took place from the creation. Because I didn't know there was a coin before Litecoin that you had created, which was an alternate version of something called, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right, Tenebrix, and you created Fairbrix, which was a more fair version of what Tenebrix was.
Yep. So Tenebrix is actually the coin that first introduced script mining to the space. The issue of Tenebrix is they had like a huge pre-mine, 7 million coins pre-mined for the creator. Supposedly the creator did this so that he can help with people kind of mixing coins. He was planning to do a mixing service using the 7 million coins for mixing. But a lot of the supporters of Tenebrix were not happy with the pre-mine because it's just a huge amount of coins and it can be easily dumped on the market. So someone in the community pushed for a fair launch of basically fair fork of Tenebrix called Fairbrix. And they were looking for developers to help with that. And I was I was looking at the Bitcoin codebase at the time and was quite familiar with it. So I decided to help out and help launch Fairbrix. Unfortunately, Fairbrix had a bug in it that came from the Tenebrix code that caused it to kind of some of the blocks did not have mining rewards. So the launch was pretty messy. And then it was relaunched. That wasn't very successful. So then I stepped back and decided to do something different, right? I wanted to do a different coin based off of the Bitcoin code base, not off of the Tenebrix code base, and just make it simple. Basically, create silver to Bitcoin's gold, and also try to just make sure it's as fair as I can make it. And that's what I did. And and the rest is history.
Well, and when you talk about fairness, I mean that's kind of, I think, a lot of the idea behind your creation of Litecoin. Aside from the fact that it's 4 times the supply and 4 times faster, and was kind of created to be a silver to the gold to Bitcoin, you created it with script mining, which allowed for a more fairer mining process. Do you mind sharing a little bit about the importance of what you did with the script mining thing and why it continues to remain on Litecoin?
Yeah. So script was copied from Tenebricks, and the idea was that script's hashing algorithm is more memory intensive, so it would be harder, not impossible, to GPU mine it and also eventually ASIC mine it. As we know today, Litecoin is being ASIC mined, but back then it was CPU mined for I think almost a year, if not more. What was important about it being CPU mined is that anyone with a computer can mine Litecoin, right? That's why we had thousands of miners or users joining the network on the first day, because they can, right? If coin, it was important to me back then that the coin had to be CPU mined so that the users, anyone can mine it. It was important because the users are your early adopters, right? They will be the ones out there pushing for adoption. So, and the miners are the users. So if people were not able to mine it, then they had to buy it off an exchange, and they'll be less likely to be pushing for adoption. So CPU mining was very important back then, and I think that's one of the reasons why I succeeded. And also, of course, the fairness was what people wanted, and people supported it.
So are people able to still mine Litecoin with CPUs now, or is it pretty much ASICs have taken over?
It's pretty much ASICs has taken over. So you can still mine with CPU. You just won't get a lot of hash rate, and you won't get any blocks. There have been like botnets, hacked botnets that have mined coins like Litecoin and others. But because the botnets have like thousands or tens of hundreds of thousands of CPUs, even though it's not very efficient, it's still free money for the hacker, right? For the owners of the botnet. So basically they hack other computers to have them mine coins for them, right? So that's still possible. I'm not sure if that's still happening, but right now ASICs are dominating the Litecoin network, which is fine, right? Which means miners are dedicated to mining Litecoin, and of course Dogecoin, because Dogecoin is merge mined with Litecoin.
Yeah.
So what's important is that Litecoin miners cannot mine Bitcoin. So it's not that we're kind of stealing or competing with Bitcoin for miners, and that was very important because if you had to compete with Bitcoin for miners, it's really hard to succeed.
Right. No, I agree. I agree 100%. And I mean, I'm glad that you mentioned the merge mining with Dogecoin, because that's something that I found out about 6 months ago. And it was something from what I'm understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, that you had suggested to help keep Dogecoin alive, and had because of the mining aspect, and had the merge mining not taken place, it's very much possible that there really wouldn't be a Dogecoin around today. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. So this was it like 2016 or earlier? Dogecoin. The issue with Dogecoin was that it was. So one thing I made sure when I forked Bitcoin is to keep the mining, the block halving schedule the same. So every 4 years, blocks get cut in half. This was because Satoshi was very brilliant when he designed that. He wanted to give Bitcoin kind of enough time for it to succeed, right? So it's structured kind of like a startup where you're paying your equity to early employees who are going to help you get to the next level, right? So half of the Bitcoin coins are mined in the first 4 years, and then a quarter of it is mined in the next 4 years, and it gets halved over time, right? So that schedule helps it so that the inflation is kept in check, and you're rewarding adopters enough so that they will support the network and push for adoption. So I kept that the same with Litecoin. every 4 years the block rewards get halved. What the Dogecoin developers did, unfortunately, was that they made the halving every month. I think every month or every 2 months instead of every 4 years. So the block rewards kept getting halved, and what that means is the security kept getting halved, and the hash rate kept getting halved over the months.
Okay.
And because Dogecoin used script, it was competing with Litecoin for miners. And at that time in 2016, it became pretty obvious that the hash rate is so low that a small Litecoin miner or a small Litecoin pool or a big miner can actually easily attack the Dogecoin network, to 51% attack it, to starve it from blocks or whatever, right? Just it can easily be attacked for hundreds of dollars. So I suggested to the Dogecoin community that that they need to quickly solve this, right? There are multiple different solutions, but the best solution, in my opinion, was to merge mine. Merge mining was something that was proven, or it first happened on Namecoin, being merge mined with Bitcoin. It's actually something that Satoshi suggested could be done in one of the Bitcoin talk posts, that you can merge mine a coin with another coin, basically share the same miners and network hash rate, same security, and you get rewards from both coins. So the miners are paid extra for also merge mining Dogecoin. So suggested that to the community. The community did not take it well initially. They thought I was trying to sabotage the coin, because at that time Dogecoin was quite popular.
Right.
It was it. I don't know
Well,
if it did.
it was
but
a newer
almost,
cryptocurrency, right?
yeah, it almost caught up to Litecoin's market cap. It might have exceeded at one point, but because of the security, the hash rate decreasing, it was getting very easy to 51% attack it. So they needed to do something, and eventually they developers agreed with my proposal to merge mine it, and they added that in as a hard fork, and because of that, they survived the next 5 years. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure they would have gotten attacked and kind of just disappeared, because once the coin is 51% attacked and been able to do it consistently, then people won't trust it anymore, and people won't run nodes.
Right.
But who knows, right? Some coins were 51% attacked, like Ethereum Classic, and they kind of just brushed it off and did stuff like central checkpointing, which is or checkpointing, which is a very centralizing move, or even what Bitcoin Cash did, which is every 11 blocks you lock it in. So it really hurts decentralization, but in the end, like, people may not care about decentralization that much. So I don't know. Maybe it would have survived. It's hard to say, but it definitely, I think it was great move for both Dogecoin and Litecoin. Like today, Dogecoin block rewards are helping Litecoin miners quite a bit, or script miners, I should say.
Okay.
They're making like 3 times as much money as before, as if they only mined Litecoin.
Does that take more resources or anything, or is it just like running it like normal and it just happens to be an additional reward?
Slightly more resources, but
okay.
Nothing. It's not nothing.
And I didn't see when you
care about.
When you explained it that way too, I didn't know that Namecoin was doing merge mining with Bitcoin. That's interesting to know that. I didn't know any other coins were piggybacking off of Bitcoin. That's kind of what I think about it, as piggybacking.
Yeah, Namecoin is probably the biggest one off of Bitcoin. There are others that are merge mined with Bitcoin, and also there are others that are merge mined with Litecoin. So a lot of the pools actually merge mine like a dozen or half a dozen or so coins. Most of them don't give out much reward, but it's something, right? It costs them very little to add it if they're already merge mining with Dogecoin, and they just have to get extra coins and to sell. And they some pools like Litecoin pool give out rewards in Litecoin. So if they mine Dogecoin, they just sell it for Litecoin and give for simplicity, instead of giving miners like 6 different coins, they just give them Litecoin.
Right, now that makes sense. Now, when you mentioned Tenebricks, you mentioned that one of the problems was a pre-mine. With Litecoin, when you launched Litecoin, that was a complete fair launch with no pre-mine, correct?
Yeah. There was 2 extra blocks that was mined, that I had to do to kind of protect the network, protect the Genesis block. So um, there were actually, it was 100 Litecoins that was effectively pre-mined, but it wasn't anything like, it wasn't a lot, right? For
Okay.
example, like Ethereum had like 60% of the coins pre-mined or something like that. I don't know
Right, with the
exactly.
pre-sale and all this.
Yeah. So
You didn't
Litecoin,
pre-sale any of those 200 additional tokens, did you?
no, no.
Okay. I mean, that's
Um,
the reason I'm bringing this up is because of, you really do seem to be looking out for the community, the people that are supporting the project, and I just wanted to highlight that, especially with this being right around the 10-year anniversary or a little after.
yeah. One thing I talked about previously is I actually went an extra step to make sure it's fair, right? So some coins that were launched before Litecoin they didn't have a pre-mine, but what they did was they released like the client to their friends and family before, so it was kind of mined. It's not like a set coins that was just added to the Genesis block. It was like secretly mined. So there's that. People secretly mine coins before the public launch, or just announce it to a small group, right? And another thing people did was, they didn't release clients for Linux or for Mac. Only had Windows clients or only had Linux clients. So only people with specific computers can mine. So what I did was, before the public launch, I made sure that there were binaries and the source was released for everything, so people can actually test their computer mining testnet Litecoins up to the point of launch. And all they had to do at launch was change a config file, restart the client, and the client would be mining on mainnet. So I just made it as simple as possible for people to mine the second I launch it, right? And the
Right.
launch time was also voted in by the community. So it wasn't ideal for me. It was like during dinner time for me, um, but whatever the community wanted. So we did it at that time, and people. That's why in the beginning there were thousands of people mining Litecoins.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I appreciate that. And so another thing that I wanted to highlight is since Litecoin started in 2011, um, have there been any issues with the Litecoin blockchain being down, having to do any rollbacks or anything like that? Like, and the reason I mention this is because we have a project that a lot of people think is successful, Solana, which calls itself decentralized, but yet turns off its blockchain. And I didn't know that you could turn off a decentralized blockchain. And I don't think that Litecoin has had any issues since it started. But correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right. Litecoin has been up since the start, since October 13 of 2011. Um, it hasn't had any downtime. The network has been working flawlessly ever since. Basically, every 2.5 minutes, on average, you'll find a block, and transactions would go through. The only issue that I remember is, during the early days, we were attacked with dust spam. So people would send, tiny amounts of dust. Right, that happens on Bitcoin also. Um, just spamming people's wallets, right? So if anyone posts, back then people were posting their wallet address on Bitcoin Talk. Everyone was very open about like having their Litecoin address in their forum profile so people can send them tips or whatever, right? So someone basically sent tons of dust to all these public addresses, and that caused your node, your client, your wallet to slow down, just processing all that dust. And that was like one of the only issues. So I had to update the software a few times to combat that. But all people had to do was just download new software to make it. Otherwise, the old software is just like running really slow because of dust. That's basically it. I don't remember there were any other issues. I think half of it has to do with just luck. So Bitcoin ran into some issues, and because we were, a version or two back from Bitcoin. Bitcoin, in a sense, acted as a testnet for Litecoin for a while. So Bitcoin ran into some issues. They had to roll back effectively, or they had to ask pools to stop running new code because of a fork that happened, an accidental fork. And that's considered like some downtime, right? For 4 to 6 hours, transactions didn't go through, and
Yeah.
Litecoin never had that problem. Like the network transactions always goes through within
That's
10
well,
minutes at max.
the way that you explain that is really interesting, is like how Bitcoin kind of acted as a test net in a sense, because I know that there was inflation bugs, there were other type of bugs, and in the beginning it's not as immutable as people claim that the Bitcoin blockchain is immutable. There's obviously been some mutability issues. So that again was another thing I wanted to highlight, and I wanted to ask you that because I wanted to find out if in fact, since it was launched late, since Litecoin was launched later, if you were able to avoid a lot of those early Bitcoin problems, which you definitely answered. So appreciate that.
Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we want to take things slowly. This is like changing your engine out in mid-flight, right? So Litecoin has been flying nonstop for 10 plus years, and now we're adding something like MWeb to it, which is a huge change. So it's tough, right? We may run into some hiccups. I
Right.
wouldn't be surprised if we do.
Now, OmniLite came out before this latest upgrade with MWeb and Taproot, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, so the OmniLite, the way I understood it is on the Bitcoin blockchain that we have Tether that runs on the Omni side of blockchain, and that was created for Litecoin, since Litecoin is using a lot of the similar code. So with OmniLite, people can create tokens and NFTs, right?
Right. Omni is a second layer solution, right? So what it's doing is it's using Bitcoin or Litecoin in this case to handle tracking new tokens, token creation, token transfers, NFTs. So what it's doing is every transaction, basically, if you want to send, let's say you create a token on Omni, on Litecoin, you want to send one of these coins to your friend. What happens is you have to create a normal Litecoin transaction, sending a tiny amount of coins. And in that transaction, you're encoding the information about sending this token to your friend. So the Litecoin network miners don't really know what's going on with Omni, right? So Litecoin miners are just mining that transaction. It's a valid Litecoin transaction. It has a certain amount of secret kind of text encoded, and that text is Omni clients will understand what's going on, that it's moving tokens from one user to the other users. And that's how it's like a second layer solution and just piggyback off of a Litecoin transaction.
Okay, that makes sense. I didn't know that it was actually a second layer thing, but that makes complete sense. And these 10-year anniversary NFTs for Litecoin, are they on the Litecoin blockchain?
No, these were done on the Ethereum blockchain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible to make NFTs like this on the Litecoin blockchain?
It is. So right now, people are doing it with people are creating NFTs on Litecoin blockchain. The difference downside with this is that we don't have a marketplace. So unlike like Ethereum has OpenSeas and other marketplace that people can buy and sell and list their tokens, their NFTs. You can't do that with Litecoin. So people are doing it like as a Twitter thread or selling over Twitter and then just transferring the NFT to other people.
Okay.
But there are people working on a marketplace for NFTs and other stuff on Litecoin using Omni. So
is this going to allow for stable coins like Tether or USDC to come to Litecoin?
Easily. Like you can easily do that. That's one of the reasons why we actually worked on getting Omni on Litecoin. It's been a work in progress for quite a few years. I really wanted to convince Tether to launch on Litecoin, and I've talked to them. They're interested, but it might take some time. I think it's a great solution for them with fees being so high on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and Litecoin is super secure and just works. It's fast and low fees, so it's perfect for something like Tether or USDC. We'll see if and when they do it.
What about DeFi? Would that allow for someone, if someone in the community or someone wanted to build some sort of DeFi platform, could they do that using OmniLite?
Not as effectively as on Ethereum. So Litecoin and Bitcoin uses the scripting engine, which is not Turing complete, so it's not as fully functional as the smart contracts on Ethereum. So you can do something like that, like a decentralized exchange. There are there are people working on making the smart contracts better on Litecoin. You can look up something called Bitcoin Computer. That's something that's being built on top of Litecoin and other proof of work coins that can add more smart contract capabilities to Litecoin. So that's something that I'm pretty excited about. It's also a company I invested in to help make that happen.
Is that similar to the smart contracts that are being able to be deployed on the Bitcoin blockchain?
It's more powerful than what's currently doable on Bitcoin and Litecoin.
Okay, very cool, very cool. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about Litecoin. They're like, I just want it to be a currency and don't want all these different additions being added. But then the unfortunate thing, Charlie, and this is like when you mentioned, maybe people don't even care about decentralization anymore. That's kind of seems like the way forward, the direction that people are thinking. And so it can be kind of disheartening when when you think about all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the simplicity, but that unfortunately too, with the simplicity of it works, it does what it's supposed to do, and it does it well. It hasn't had any downtime, any kind of problem. You would think that would be celebrated, but because there's no NFTs, there's no games, because there's no DeFi, it's like people don't care about projects. They would be more concerned with a centralized entity versus something that has proven itself to work effectively.
Yeah, I mean, we want to focus on making Litecoin the best money, right, as a currency, store value, payment network. So that's our focus. So that's why we're not doing crazy stuff on the Litecoin network, and that's also why we're adding MWeb, which adds fungibility, something that's missing, a really key important feature of good sound money that's missing in Litecoin. Yeah, so in some sense, Litecoin is boring, right? It just works. It doesn't do anything fancy, but that's also why people use it, right? If you look at BitPay added Litecoin support mid last year, and very quickly you saw Litecoin usage grow over time, and it's now the second most used coin on BitPay, next to second to Bitcoin. It's even more used than Ethereum or Dogecoin or any other coins, right?
PayPal.
And it's
PayPal
it's added to PayPal because it's Litecoin has
Grayscale still has Litecoin, so I mean there's a lot of institutional investors, a lot of a lot of major exchanges that still all respect Litecoin for what it is.
Yeah, because it works, right? It hasn't stopped working. That's important, right? It's secure. You can't hack it, you can't attack it, you can't steal money, you can't reverse transactions. It's decentralized, censorship resistant. That's what it's all about, right? Censorship resistance is very important. It's why people use Bitcoin and Litecoin in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's two things, right? One is that the inflation is set, right? No company or governments can just print more money like what they did with the US dollar, what the Fed did with the US dollar.
Like what they're still doing.
They're still doing, printed 40% of all US dollar out there in a year. That's crazy. So with that, people know that their money is safe from some entity inflating it away. That's one of the most important things. The second important thing is censorship resistant, right? Money is yours. You should be able to do whatever you want with it without some company or some government saying that you can't send someone coins. And those are two things that we, or at least I, hold very dearly and want to make sure we keep it that way.
And I appreciate you for that very much so. Okay, now we have MWeb, which is the long-awaited Mimblewimble extension being added to Litecoin. We have Taproot. I had messaged you a few months back when we seen Taproot and Schnorr signatures being added to Litecoin or Bitcoin. The first time something had been done since 2017. At that time, you had told me no Taproot, no Schnorr signatures, which really surprised me because a lot of times it seemed like what was being done to Bitcoin was being done to Litecoin first, and Litecoin was kind of acting as a test net for Bitcoin, even though in the very beginning Bitcoin was a test net for Litecoin, which that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. But
Well, for
what
the most part, Litecoin would add Bitcoin stuff after Bitcoin, right? So what happened with SegWit in 2017 was that Bitcoin was at a impasse, right? It couldn't get SegWit activated because of miners blocking it, and I saw that as an opportunity for Litecoin to help out, and that's why we did that, right? We added SegWit and pushed for adoption, push for activation, just so that we can prove that um, that it works, right? Um, One thing with testnet is that there's no money involved, and Bitcoin is all about game theory, right? It's all about game theory of how Bitcoin works. So when there's no money involved, there's no incentive for attackers to attack the network. Whereas because Litecoin had $1 billion market cap, um, there are incentives for attackers to attack it once SegWit is activated. So the FUD out there was that anyone can spend attack, where if SegWit is activated, people can steal money, or miners can steal money from SegWit transactions. So once it activated on Litecoin, and it was proven that over the after a few months, nobody was able to steal any money from SegWit transactions, it kind of killed that FUD. And I think that was important for miners and pools and users to be comfortable that this FUD were just all lies propagated by people who didn't want SegWit to activate.
Right. That's interesting too to even think about. I mean, a lot of people may not be aware that of the SegWit activation and the fact that Litecoin can be utilized on something like the Lightning Network, even though it's no point because the transactions you're utilizing on the Litecoin blockchain are cheap as it is. So
Yep.
now,
And if it ever gets to a point where Litecoin is congested, like Lightning Network would just work, would be flawless on Litecoin, and fees will be much lower than even fees on Bitcoin.
I can only imagine it would be super inexpensive. So with the upgrades that was recently done, Snore signature wasn't added to Litecoin this go around, right?
It is. It's we added it together. So Taproot with Snore is another feature, including MWeb. So miners can signal for either or both. We expect them to both activate at the same time. So people who upgrade to new code would signal for both Taproot and MWeb. That's what I expect. So it should activate around the same time.
When are you expecting that?
I would say give it a few months.
Few months. Okay.
Yeah, so it'll take some time. So activation signaling doesn't start until February 25th, around then. So at that time, people can, or miners or pools can signal for MWeb and Taproot. And once there are, in a 2-week time period, if there are 75% of blocks signaling for MWeb, then it will activate. So that's going to take some time for pools and miners to upgrade their software, right? So they have to test it. They have to make sure everything works. They have to upgrade their pool software to include this new feature. And pools are already testing it. So with the release candidate, we reached out to a few pools. Some of them got back to us saying they're testing the release candidate. For example, Litecoin Pool, one of the largest Litecoin pools out there, or script pools out there, is testing the release candidate, and I expect them to be activating it pretty soon, or sorry, signaling it pretty soon.
Very cool. Very cool. And so is this with everything that you're doing, or that's being done with this upgrade with Schnorrs and Taproot, is that basically the same thing that took place with Bitcoin a few months back with the addition of Mimblewimble via MWeb?
Yeah, Taproot on Litecoin is exactly the same as the one on Bitcoin.
Okay.
So the only difference is Mimblewimble, or
Right.
or MWeb. I don't like to say Mimblewimble. It's just it's a mouthful, and people are confused about what it is. So.
Well, and isn't it from Harry Potter as well?
Yeah, I think it's like a spell from Harry Potter. The whole thing was like Harry Potter themed. The history of Mimblewimble was actually pretty interesting. The guy who came up with this idea of doing this
The
kind of just
anonymous individual.
yeah, he wrote this paper about Mimblewimble and just dropped it on IRC
Yeah.
and disappeared. Some people actually think he's Satoshi,
Right.
but it's pretty cool how he just did it anonymously, and it's a very innovative um, way to do fungibility and privacy.
Awesome. Now, with this though, with the Mimblewimble, it's an extension. It's not something that takes place on the Litecoin blockchain itself, correct?
Yeah, we implemented it as an extension block. So what that means is, I think
It's
of
like a
it as
side chain?
it's like a side chain, but it's attached. So miners will also mine that side chain. So normal side chains on Bitcoin, Litecoin, the regular miners won't know anything about it. So it's mined by other different miners. But for this, normal regular script miners will mine this extension block. And everything in the extension block uses Mimblewimble for transactions. And then you can just move coins between the two blocks, between the main chain and the extension block. You can peg into the extension block and peg out. So if you want to use MWeb, you just peg into MWeb, and then from that point onwards, your coins use MWeb for transactions. So the amounts are hidden, and it's the inputs and outputs are combined in a block. So
Did you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Did you recently have a tweet that says something to the effect of that this isn't going to help criminals?
So it's not perfect privacy. I think the
Right.
most important part is that it hides the amount. I think for just financial privacy, it's important that when I transact, no one else needs to know how much I'm sending the recipient, and that is important. But that doesn't really help criminals, right? So that said, I think for money to be useful, it shouldn't be trackable, right? So that's why cash is one of the best form of money. Where if you're paying by cash, it's not traceable by anyone else. It's just a transaction between you and the recipient,
Mhm.
you and the merchant, right? And that's what makes it good money. So ideally, that's what we want with Litecoin. But that said, today's regulatory environment, they are using money laundering is a very important tool for tracking criminals, and we want to make sure that we at least work with that framework so that it's
Right.
so MWeb is opt-in. I don't expect like exchanges to support MWeb, and that's perfectly fine. They can just support the main net, and if people have coins on the MWeb side and they want to sell them, they would just send them to an exchange address, and they will automatically peg out from the MWeb side to the main chain, and things will just work as before.
Now, within the MWeb system, does it? Because we talk, and I really want people to go back and check out that first interview that we did, where we talk about the importance of fungibility, because we go into that with a lot more detail. This is going to allow for. Is it like a mixer type situation that's going to allow for that fungibility on that extension, or is it just hiding the price, what the amount that you're sending to and from?
So yes and no. So the most important thing is hiding the amount. There's for privacy there are two aspects of it, right? One is the amount, and the other is the kind of like the routing, like the history of the coins, right? So hiding the amount is perfect on using MWeb, unless the cryptography breaks, and we can talk more about that. But that's not right now. It works flawlessly. In terms of hiding the routing of the money, it's not perfect, and it's not trying to be perfect. What For scalability reason, what it does is every block, it combines all the inputs and outputs of all the transactions into one large transaction, and that's how MWeb works. So if you're looking at an MWeb block, you can't tell who sent what to who else, because it's just one large list of inputs and one large list of outputs. But that said, if you're running a node and you're listening on the P2P layer of the network, you can see transactions getting passed around. So you can see the individual transactions. So if anyone really wants to, they can actually have a node running and look at the individual transactions. But once it's in a block, it's just one big transaction. And that's for mainly for scalability reasons, but also for fungibility reasons. So if there are more and more people using MWeb on Litecoin, your transactions are more kind of mixed with other transactions.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes total sense. Okay, so one of the things I want to highlight and then ask you your thoughts. So we have Litecoin being added to Coinstar ATMs. We have Litecoin gaming. We have people can now convert their paychecks or their direct deposits into Litecoin, also Bitcoin and Ethereum via hedge with David Schwartz's hedge company, which people can check out, gethedge.io. I did some interviews with him as well. Was there any other, aside from Litecoin gaming, hedge, and Coinstar, was there any other news or anything that you wanted to highlight that I'm missing, or any thoughts about what I just mentioned?
I can't think of anything new right now. There's stuff in the works. There's definitely stuff in the works, but
all right. Well,
nothing right now.
I know you had a plane trip to El Salvador, because that was kind of all over the internet via John Kim. What are your thoughts on El Salvador legalizing Bitcoin? And David Schwartz said that you going down there wasn't what people were expecting it. So can you share also, aside from your thoughts with El Salvador and Bitcoin being legal tender, what your reasoning was for being down there?
What can I say? So for one, I think it's awesome what they're doing with Bitcoin being legal tender. It's pretty amazing that we now have a country pushing for Bitcoin adoption on a country level, right? So I think that's huge for Bitcoin and crypto, and I definitely support that. So we did take a trip, me and John and E Currency Hodler and Alan Austin, and also Samson. Samson was with us. Also, Samson took a trip to El Salvador for something that I can't really talk about. It's not. People shouldn't speculate too much about what's going on, but hopefully it will come to fruition within a year. But we're basically pushing for adoption, right? Pushing for Litecoin to be adopted. So stay tuned. Okay. I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
I know there wasn't a whole lot you could say, but I was just trying to see what would slip out, or what you would allow being said.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see. Oh, did you hear in the news about Russia? And I think the banks in Russia now are recognizing Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as currency.
Yeah, I saw a couple of tweets about this just today.
What are your thoughts on that?
Nothing ground shattering, right? They're just acknowledging cryptocurrency as currencies.
Well, isn't that better than our IRS recognizing it as property?
The IRS thing doesn't really matter, right? IRS can think of it as commodities, as property. It doesn't really affect anything. What's more important is that if Russia recognizes it as currency, does it mean there's no capital gains tax on it, right? Is there a capital gains tax when you convert from one currency to another? I think the U.S. tax law, IRS, still taxes that, but what's important is people can use it as money, right? You don't have to worry about, right now, in the U.S. at least, if you use Litecoin to buy coffee, you'll have to figure out how much you pay for that Litecoin, and then do some calculation, figure out how much taxes you have to pay on capital gains for that purchase, which is really annoying, cumbersome, and makes it really hard to use as currency, as money. And I know there are people working on bills to make that easier, right? To make it so that purchases under $600 or something will not be taxed, or some small amount. If you're just using it to pay for coffee, you shouldn't have to worry about trying to calculate the capital gains tax on that purchase. So I'm hopeful that will happen in the U.S.
Well, they're trying to do some legislation. It was $600 or less. Now they're bringing it back up at $200 or less. That I don't think that there would be like any capital gains. So, I mean, at least there is some positive things, and there's some positive. There's some decent politicians that are pro crypto and pro blockchain that are pushing through some awesome legislation. I had two more questions, and then I'm going to wrap things up because I know your time is limited. I think it was David Schwartz asking. I was trying to find the comment, but he said ask you about Tom Brady retiring, I think is what it was.
Okay.
Is there an inside joke to that?
No, I'm a big fan of Tom Brady. I've been a Patriots fan since I went to college in Boston, Cambridge area. So I'm kind of upset, that's kind of sad to see him go, but he's been pretty amazing over the years. Greatest of all time.
Yeah, I'm still searching for the comment, but so are you losing any sleep over this though? Is it that kind of sad?
No, I'm not losing any sleep over it.
And Miss Teen Crypto, I know you just did an interview with her, so if people haven't seen that interview, I definitely encourage people. That was 2 days ago. She told me to ask you about In and Out.
We talked about it.
Place?
Yeah, we talked about it, right? In and Out, yeah, it's one of my favorite burger joints in the area.
It's good stuff. Good stuff, yeah. 100%.
The funny thing is the owners of In and Out is very religious, so they put religious stuff on their cups and stuff. It's pretty interesting, and also because of that, they don't open on Sundays, and that's always a bummer when you go to In and Out on Sunday and then find out that they're closed.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way because I love Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is like the chicken version of In and Out.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm thinking of Chick-fil-A also. Chick-fil-A doesn't open on Sundays. In and Out actually does open on Sundays. I got that wrong. Yeah.
Well, I don't have In and Outs here in North Carolina to correct you. If I was an In and Out expert, I would have. But I definitely know that Chick-fil-A, and I love the Chick-fil-A sandwiches. And I always crave them on Sundays. I don't know why, but yeah, it's just one of those things. All right, man. Well, I really enjoyed this. Do you have anything that I didn't highlight or anything that I didn't mention that you would like to say, or any final thoughts before we wrap up today's interview?
Well, I think MWeb is huge for Litecoin. It's it is the first time we're doing something different than Bitcoin. It's for sure risky. I want people to go out there and read more about it, right? Read more about what MWeb is doing, more about how it works. I think, I think people should go out there and push for miners and pools to signal for MWeb. I think it's going to be big for Litecoin.
I had to come back to my screen here and unmute myself before I could say something. I have been talking to David Burkett. Is it Burkett?
Burkett, yeah.
Because he had a baby about a year ago or so, right?
That I don't know. Know.
Because I was going to try to interview him, and I mean, he agreed, and now he's told me he would do something in February. I just haven't reached back out to him because I wanted to get this one done before I talk to him about scheduling. But I do plan on getting him on and trying to do a really in-depth conversation about the MWeb Mimblewimble extension and all that good stuff. Because I know I'm really excited about fungibility. I mean, it is something that we need in the cryptocurrency space. And again, I don't want to revisit that conversation, but check out that first interview for everybody watching. I would definitely encourage it because there's a lot of good information in that interview. And that was May of 2020. It was right after I interviewed your brother, Bobby Lee, about Ballet, the wallet company. So, well, Charlie,
was it that long ago? Was it over a year and a half ago? I thought it was less than that, but
No, it was, and you told me you wouldn't go this long and with an interview, and you still made me wait. But it's okay. I love you. You're good people.
Yeah, you have to take your turn.
I mean, you're good people, man. And I mean, I got a lot of respect for what you do. I was hoping to get you on right at the 10-year anniversary, but you know,
We
things
tried to make that work, but it didn't happen.
it didn't happen, but it's happened today. So I appreciate your time, man. I really do.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and again, I just I haven't looked at my numbers. I've been seeing we got a lot of people watching. Again, make sure you guys are smashing the like button so other people can find these videos. If you're not subscribed to Rice TVX, Rice TVX is right at 25,000. So please subscribe and help me cross over the 25,000 mark. Subscribe to my backup channel, Rice TVX2, which has a strike right now because I'm dealing with censorship and shadow banning and all of that good stuff that we get to deal with throughout life. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Charlie, if you could bear with me 1 second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, if this is your first time watching my videos, make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, and I want to leave you with this. Be blessed, be the change, practice change.